I thought you'd be bigger. They made me bring all this back up.
It's rude.
Just before I left on my little vacation here, Netflix dropped a brand new show on me that seemed tailor-made for my appreciation. It's called Altered Carbon, and so I was able to download that puppy. Thank you so much, Netflix, for letting us download episodes and movies and things. It helps those long plane rides out so much. But Altered Carbon is very much in the vein of the cyberpunk sci-fi stuff that we've seen before. It has, inescapable Blade Runner aesthetic, and it's really easy to make that comparison. This is a show about being able to be born again in different sleeves. They call the human body a sleeve. You have this carbon that comes out of the back, called the stack, that comes out of the back of a neck on any one of these characters, and then it can be planted into another sleeve. And so Joel Kinnaman is playing a guy called Takeshi Kovacs, who is a dead rebel from a couple of hundred years ago. And this is where the mind-twisting, mind-bending stuff really starts to happen with this show. So he's playing a guy that's been sort of on ice for a couple of hundred years. He's brought back to life to become a kind of quasi-private investigator for this very rich guy that lives up high in the clouds. It feels like every dystopian future world that's crafted for us in cinema or television. People either live on spaceships or on really tall buildings, and I hope that's not really what happens on Earth. I hope it's not the grounders versus the people that are up in the heavens. But anyways, the guy that's up in the clouds, he's played by James Purefoy, is one of the wealthiest people in the world. He's part of this huge, expansive, global force called the Protectorate, and he invests heavily into his own protection, and he can basically do whatever he wants, and he's into some really sick and disgusting things, and he's got an awful family who are also all into sick and disgusting things, and of course they've had so much money, they've been around forever. And so Takeshi Kovacs gets sort of thrust into this world. He's disgusted by it because all of his learnings and teachings were at complete odds with this idea of never ending and constant regeneration. And so we get this metaphysical kind of through line throughout the series, but we also have a show that's populated by a lot of not superfluous characters, because I think there's some interesting work with these characters, but they don't resonate. They don't have the same level of impact, I would say, as Joel Kinnaman's Takeshi Kovacs.
I'll take the case.
They've done some really nice work with the effects, so I think if you just look at this aesthetically, you're like, wow, this is an expensive, beautiful show, but it does feel like the show does get a little overly melodramatic, a little soap opera-esque. It feels like some of the characters are sort of spinning in circles with monologues, and saying a lot of the same things over and over again. There's a little bit of like treading water throughout this. As it stands, I felt like the idea of replaceable bodies, and God, there are bodies throughout this thing. Everybody's naked in this show. It's like Rome, but obviously that stuff is exhilarating to watch, all of that stuff, but it feels a little disposable in a way, just like along the lines of the bodies are disposable, and in a way the characters are disposable. And that's a big statement in this show. It's really about the idea that humans need that ever-present sense that death is around the corner, and if you don't have that, then so much of the meaning of life is sucked out of life. And that sort of aids the idea of the value of the show getting sucked out a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really matter if you see these characters die, because you know that they're just going to come up again. And it really changes your commitment to the concern of these characters, And still, lots to think about, lots to digest. Really wonderful production values. Some terrible music choices in this show. Like, suddenly some cheesy 80s kind of synth pop rock junk music would pop up and someone's singing, and it just felt so cheeseball. But for the most part, aesthetically, and I like Joel Kinnaman, and there were some other standout performances in here. This was a fun show. I definitely recommend that you check this out for yourself. I have a feeling that this is going to be a huge, huge success for Netflix, and I expect that we're going to see more from Altered Carbon. As it stands, though, I think that this was cool, very cool, mostly cool, but there were some disappointing things for me that made me disassociate from the show a little bit. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10.